Good afternoon, Facebook, Instagram, Washington, D.C. This is Earl Rush, and I'm here with a special lunchtime edition of Straight Up Talk with Earl Rush. My guest for the evening is the world famous DJ Henry Knowles. One of the reasons why I like to have these shows is because the young kids that are growing up today, or they don't even know about the people who paved the way or who made salsa special. Now, Henry was involved in New York back in the 90s, in the 80s and the 90s when New York dance scene was caliente. He was in the thick of things. Henry Knowles has played in 80 countries, 850 cities. I can't even count past 600. But he's been all over the world. He's paved the way for any DJ that has ever left American soil and has gone over to Europe or abroad. It's because of Henry Knowles. I could go on about him, but we're going to bring him here right now. And ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and pleasure to bring on to you world famous DJ Henry Knowles. Henry, are you there?
Yes, sir. Hello, everybody. Hello, Earl. Miss
Hey, good.
Good to be
Well,
here.
I know that you're busy, Henry, so we're going to get straight to the point. We're going to start off chronologically, like when you were a little kid. Tell us about your stories back in the day when you were growing up.
Wow. Well, I grew up with Latin music because my Puerto Rican culture. So, since I was like 5 years old, I mean, my family would get together, and it was always the food, the drinks, and move the furniture and put on the salsa and start dancing. So, the salsa has always been present in my life. And I used to spend my summers in Puerto Rico, and I lived in Puerto Rico for quite some time. I was living between New York and Puerto Rico, and so the exposure to the music was always there. And I started collecting records at a very young age. I loved music. About 10 years old, I used to shine shoes on the weekends and use the money that I earned to go and buy vinyls. I used to go and buy records. At that time, it was like 50 cents a record. And by the time I got into high school, when I was about 16, 17, I had a big collection of records already. Salsa, merengue. At that time, there was no bachata. It was salsa, merengue, cha-cha-cha, boleros. And when I was in high school, a friend of mine was organizing a Christmas party. I grew up in the Lower East Side of New York, near the Manhattan Bridge, near that Chinatown area. I was born in Spanish Harlem, and a friend of mine was organizing the Christmas party, and he asked me to bring some music to the party because he knows I had a collection. And that's how it all started because I had never thought about being a DJ. But when I arrived at the party, I bring my vinyl to them. They say, "No, no, you play them because you know the music," and they use the DJ equipment. I never even been in the DJ booth before that, and that's how it all started. Right,
Wow. Wow.
I was
Wow.
in high school. I was about 17 years old at this time.
Okay. So you're playing, when did you, what was your first club gig where you actually were the DJ, Henry?
Well, that one was La Martinique. That was the place, but that wasn't a gig. I guess it was just I was just bringing music. My the place I first worked officially like a DJ in the Bronx. It was the Garden of Roses. It's place on 177 in Rosedale,
Mhm.
and amazing because DJs back then we had to pay our dues. It wasn't just about downloading some songs on a computer and going to a gig. We had to really do our homework and collect vinyl. And the place went to DJ, they didn't have the gear. We had to bring everything, the turntables, the mixer, the speakers, the amplifiers. Back then, there was no powered speakers. And the funny story, that place, the owner had on the window, I think it was I forgot what night of the week it was. He used to say live music. And the live music was Machito
Wow.
He lived upstairs and rehearsed there. I think it was like on a Wednesday or Thursday night, and he rehearsed there, and he put live music. So he was like rehearsing numbers. So he would stop in the middle of the song because they had to fix certain things, and people dance, and then when it stopped, they just wait, and then they start dancing again. But it wasn't an actual show; it was a rehearsal.
Right.
So that was the actual official first place I worked
Okay.
in the Bronx. Yeah.
So, to my understanding, that you knew Izzy Rodriguez when you guys were first coming up, even before he was old enough. Give us the stories on that.
Yeah, Izzy, because back then, since when we went to the clubs, we went with like 10, 12, 15 crates of records. It wasn't CDs at that time. And the vinyl was heavy. It was big milk crates. So Izzy used to be waiting for me in front of the club. It was a club called Epoca in the Bronx. And he would be waiting there when I pulled over my car. Let me help you with your records. He was like 13 years old at the time, 13, 14. That's how he used to get into the club because he loved music. He loved to dance. And that's how a lot of people used to get into the club with the DJs. Waiting in front to help them with the crates inside. And I loved it because it was a lot of work to get all those crates inside. So yeah, me and Izzy go way back.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
I don't even remember how we actually met, but yeah, he was like 13, 14 years old at the time. DJ's assistant.
Okay, so you guys know each other. So let's go off in chronological order. How did Club Hush come about? I found some photographs of Club Hush of you and Sion, stylist, and
Yeah.
Izzy and the young lady and Frankie. So how did that come about?
Me and Izzy, I forgot who thought about it. If it was me, I think we thought of it together. We wanted to do a night, and we found this place, Hush, and it wasn't. I even forgot who found it. I think it was Izzy that knew the place, and we decided to do the Monday nights. Mondays has always been a special night in New York because Monday is like an industry night. It's a night that, first of all, there's no Broadway shows. It's a dark night for Broadway, and it's a night that most entertainers don't work, especially like musicians. That's why we used to always get a lot of pop ups. But Hush was an instant success. We started the Monday nights back in 2001, I believe, and it was at Hush. And we lasted there for about a year, but it was so successful. The thing is that Hush closed down. They sold the place. That's why we had to move. And from there, we moved to another place called Show, and then we wound up at Flamingo. And Flamingo was like 4 years there, and that was wow, that was history. We featured different bands every week, and we had the top bands from New York, from Puerto Rico, from LA, from everywhere. It was
Ooh,
incredible.
okay.
But Hush was the where it all started. It was smaller than El Flamingo. I don't know. You ever got to go to El Flamingo?
I did, yes.
Yeah, that was
Mhm.
wow. I mean, when we closed that down because they sold the club too, people were crying. Yeah, but
Yeah.
Mondays were big. I mean, Mondays were just amazing because we used to get, all the parties that we organized. We loved the live music, so we had live music at every night that we did our parties, and we used to get the best dancers of New York there. And we had Frankie as the instructor.
Okay.
He was just like building up the name,
Hmm.
and I started managing him at that time. I'm the one that took him around the world, and when
Okay.
I was doing the
How did you
DJ
meet Frankie Martinez?
and through Izzy, it was well, I seen Frankie because I was also working with Eddie before,
Okay.
Eddie Torres, and Frankie was Eddie's student, and he was part of Eddie Torres dance company. And I think I don't know. I think I had met him at Eddie's classes.
Mhm.
But then Izzy was the one that told me, like really pushed Frankie. He loved Frankie, and he convinced me to bring him in so parties to have a show, and I fell in love with him right away. And then from there, I started managing him also.
Okay.
He became our regular instructor and
Okay.
performers. He had a dance company at the time, Abaqua.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Mm.
that was that's when Frankie was starting to build that name and get the fame.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So when I was in DC, I used to sneak away from DC on Tuesdays. No one ever knew where I was going, and I was cheap, so I would catch the Greyhound bus up to go to the Copacabana and catch it
Wow.
right back afterwards. Henry, tell us about those times. Just tell us about the Grammy
Wow.
times at the Copa.
The Copa, I DJ'd the first Copa. I don't know if you ever made it to that one, but it was
Mm-hmm.
on 60th Street between 5th and Madison. That was the original Copacabana that goes back way back to like the 50s, like
Right.
the where the song came from and everything, the
Right.
Copacabana. Um, and then they lost their lease there and they moved over to 57th Street. I forgot what year that was, but the Copa was they started Latin nights on Tuesday. That's why Tuesdays were so famous. It originally was only Tuesdays, and then it was so successful that they added the Fridays and Saturdays eventually. And when they moved over to 57th Street, which was originally the club I DJ'd there too, it was called Red Parrot. And then from Red Parrot, it went to Emerald City. It had a few names there. Even in the 80s, I used to roller skate there. It was called High Rollers. And yeah, the Copa was internationally known. I mean, people like you say, you drove up in DC, but there's people that travel from all around the world. When they came to New York, they were the Copa, and that's why I gained a lot of the fame too, because it was the world famous Copacabana.
Mm.
And from there is when people started to invite me to DJ different countries, even before the congresses. They invited me to go to Japan, to Germany, to Italy, to Argentina, and I got to start traveling before the congresses even started.
Okay. So all of your events
Yes.
always happen to have the best dancers. Was that how did that happen? I mean, there were other promoters having events, but why were the dancers going to your events?
Um, I think also this go back to those that era, right? That era of the 80s and 90s. There was so many clubs in New York, and some of the best dancers that came out of New York City, some of the original Palladium dancers. I remember I used to DJ a place called Ipanema
Mm-hmm.
uh, that used to get all the old school dance. I learned a lot from that because those dancers, they knew the music and they were asking me for artists that I never heard of, and that's how I used to be like, okay, I don't have it, but
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow I have it, and I used to go and buy it. And that's how it helped me educate myself with different music and new artists. But New York was on fire at that time. In that era, there was so many clubs. We used to go bar hopping. We used to go club hopping, where we could go to 5, 6 clubs in one night, and all of them were full with live bands. That's how that was before I started really getting heavy into the DJ. Yeah, I was going out dancing when I
Mm-hmm.
was dancing too, and hitting all the clubs, and just I started DJing some places little by little, and then eventually I got into all the big clubs. But the dancers, I think it was all about the music, because we had the best music, we had the live bands, and the vibe, and the dancers like to be where all the dancers are, the best dancers are. So I, I think that was the success of it. Like the Flamingo, from Hush to Flamingo was like wow, and people came religiously, even in the freezing weather nights, because you remember Flamingo was all the way on the west side and about 4 blocks away from the train station.
Right.
And the cold weather when you had to walk those long avenues.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have a car, you don't come by taxi. It's a trek. It
Okay,
was a trek.
definitely.
Yeah,
Get out of here, boy. So,
yeah,
unbelievable. So you grew up with it's your culture. You're in New York. You're in Puerto Rico.
hmm
But I'm sure now I don't want to stereotype, but most people I know who grew up like that, they were doing kitchen dancing. How did you transform from the kitchen dancing to dancing on two? Because you're pretty good on two dancers. So did you have lessons, or did you just from watching people in the clubs?
Well, it's a funny story, right? Back in the days, let's say before I seen Eddie Torres teaching everywhere, right? I was like I said, the Ipanema. I was DJing in those clubs, and the dancers were phenomenal, phenomenal. And but everybody danced uniquely. Nobody looked the same. Everybody was different. But some people were breaking on one, some people were breaking on two, some people were breaking on four.
Uh huh.
There's a lot of old school dancers that break on the 4 and 8, not on the 2 and 6 or the 1 and 5.
Okay.
So and I thought I was a pretty good dancer, but I used to dance with some women and I felt like I was off. I couldn't sync with them, and it's because they were dancing either on 2 or on 4,
Right.
and I was dancing on one. Yeah. So back in the days, like, around the 90s, I was working a club in the Bronx and called Side Street, and I was running a Sunday after the beach party, and Eddie Torres was the instructor. And he would when he would get there early, he broke it down for me because he explained it to me musically, which I understood. He broke it down with the difference of break. They didn't call it dancing on one and dancing on two. He called it breaking on two. So he explained the difference musically to me, and that's when I said, "Oh, I understand now." I never really took lessons, but Eddie used to always give me a step every week when he came. He said, "I got a
Okay.
step for you, Henry, here."
Okay.
and and that's how I picked up dancing on two. And then I also understood by watching how some dancers were on one, on two, or on four, and
Right.
even some dance on three. And they like the Colombians, they dance on 3 and 7. So it's very, everybody has different style. When I first went to the congresses, the people from Netherlands, from Holland, they were breaking forward on the left foot. What is it? On the right foot. They were breaking forward on the right foot, where everybody else is breaking forward on the left.
Right.
So they had to do switch classes to switch to dance the way everybody else was dancing. So
Okay.
yeah, it was different all around even when you went from New York to the West Coast, East Coast to West Coast, so different the dance.
Okay. All right. So you're Henry Knowles. You're having the parties. You're
Yes.
partying with Izzy and all the New York and Copa Cabana and all that. How did you break into representing artists? Can you tell me about that?
When I was working at the Copa, all the people from the labels used to visit me because back then it was the DJs that broke the music, that introduced the new tunes, and labels you would come to you every night saying, "Yeah, I got the new song for you." They will give you the promotion. At that time, it was CDs. When I was DJing, that's when I had switched from vinyl to CDs, and all the record label reps used to come to me and bring me music to play, and I became friends with all of them, especially the guys from RMM, which is Ralph Mercado Management, and I became close friends with Ralph Mercado, which was the godfather of New York. He's the one that did all the biggest concerts and represented the biggest artists, the biggest names, and it was like the Fania of the '90s.
Yeah.
And and then what happened was there was one guy, David Diaz, that came up to me, and he had started a new label at Warner Electro Atlantic, and he asked me if I could come on board and help with the promotions. And I was like, but I have no experience working with a label. And he says, oh, you could do it. I'll teach you. And that's how I started. I went to
Great.
Where, and I was working with several artists that were under his label. And I started doing I was Northeast Promotions, covering the whole territory from New Hampshire all the way down to DC, Virginia, all that area. And I used to take them on the road doing radio, television, newspaper interviews, and giving the music to all the radio station and DJs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. So
And
I,
from there,
I bet
I went
you.
to RMM. I went to RMM and also to BMG and DME. DME was David Maldonado Entertainment. That was a company that represented, booked, and managed a lot of artists. And that's where I learned about bookings and management. And Mark Anthony was under that company. So I was on the road with Mark Anthony, Grupo Mania, Domingo Quiñones, many artists, Ruben Blades that were part of that company.
So Henry, I mean, you have met so many stars. I mean, it
Yeah.
seems like your shoulders would be sore from rubbing shoulders with all these beautiful stars. I mean, it's just an amazing story. I don't
Yeah.
want to put your business out there or your plans, but I'm sure you have some kind of book in the making or a documentary or something of your life. Are you working on that, or you still just
No, I haven't worked on it. A lot of people said I should write because there's so many stories, but I'm not a writer. I would need help with that, like somebody that could actually write for me. I
right?
have all the stories, but I'm not a writer. And
Well,
I'm too perfectionist. That will take me years. I keep rewriting and rewriting and rewriting.
I mean, I'm researching, and what I've known you for a long time, and I'm just seeing all these pictures of all these legends. It's like, but you handle it pretty cool. You're pretty humble about the situation. If I met all those people that you've met, knew they call on first name basis, you would be able to deal with me. But you see, things in perspective a lot.
Uh,
So
well, the thing is that it's amazing because when I first, like I said, when I first started dancing when I was 17, 18, that I was going out to the clubs, I was seeing all these guys because they were all in New York, Pacheco and all the bands from Puerto Rico. They used to fly in and perform there. And a lot of the guys that are living in Puerto Rico were living in New York at that time. So you got to see Hector Lavoe, Pacheco, Roena, all the legends. And for me, they were like, wow, like big superstars, my idols. And then I got to know all of them and hang out with them and go to their homes and go on the road doing promotions with them. And they're so humble, man. This just the same. They just so down to earth and so cool. And I got to know them, and they're so lovely. I mean, all of them. They're just great. Like
amazing.
Santa Cruz was like, wow. Like my grandmother, like she was so sweet. Yeah.
So Henry, you're such a sharp dresser. Is that from your growing up in your family? Is that a New York thing, or I mean, you always look nice and you always dress sharp. Is that how did that come about?
Thank you. Well, back in the days, the salsa scene was classy. It was you could not get into a club without a jacket. They were very strict on the dress code, so people dressed up. You had to dress up when you went out. You wanted to look sharp. Had some money in your pocket, and you had your suit on and your tie, and the ladies were looking sharp too. And it was a different scene than it is now. It's more casual now, but back then it was very. They had dress codes. It was very classy. If you look at the videos from the Palladium era, you see everybody had on suits. That's just the way it was. Yeah.
So you were one of the DJs involved in the first congresses. I want you to elaborate on that, and also it's a double fold question. Did you ever think that the congresses from the beginning would evolved to be such big events?
It's a funny story because I was traveling every Friday. I would DJ the remember Club Broadway. No, it was LQ's at the time, Latin Quarters. I was DJing there Thursdays, and I was doing a live broadcast on the radio with Polito Vega. It was a Fiesta con Polito. I used to DJ there from 10 to 2 in the morning. And Friday morning, I used to fly out to Puerto Rico every week to DJ in El San Juan.
Wow.
And the gentleman that used to fly me out there, his name is Eli Irizarry. And I was flying out there weekly every Friday to DJ San Juan Hotel at a club Babylon. That was the name of the club. And he told me when he came up with the idea that he wanted to do this congreso and he wanted to bring bands and shows and workshops and do like a weekend, uh, like a type of convention event. I remember when he told me the idea,
Hmm.
and then I think the following year, that year he did it, and I didn't get to go the first year. The first year was called Congreso Mundial de la Salsa, the World Salsa Congress, and I didn't get to go that year because I was traveling somewhere else. I was DJing. I was already committed. But the second year, which I believe was when it officially became the Bacardi Salsa Congress, the Congreso Bacardi de la Salsa, because the Bacardi took an interest and they became the main sponsor. I think it was 97. I went. And when I walked into that room, I felt like I died and went to salsa heaven. I swear. Like, it was unbelievable scene, because you walked in there and you saw so many different styles because you grow up in DC, so you used to seeing the way they dance in DC. And at that time, that was when the internet was just because the internet wasn't around that long when you think about it.
Right.
We weren't connected to the world like we are now, and we got to see people from Asia, from the Caribbean, from just all over the U.S., from Miami, West Coast, East Coast, Northeast, and everything. And it was incredible. And they had two stages on each. They had one stage on one side, one stage on the other side, and the dance floor in the middle. And they had all the dance shows. And as soon as the dance shows ended, they would say, "Okay, now we turn you over to the live music," and the band would kick off, and the people would just start dancing right there between the two stages. But what a lot of people don't know, they didn't really have a DJ at that time, the first Congress, because in Puerto Rico they had DJs there, but the salsa parties would not focus on DJs. It was all about live music, and normally when you went to clubs or big parties that play salsa, in between the bands, it would just be like the sound guy. He would put on a tape, or if you're like in a smaller bar, like the manager or the owner would be behind the bar just putting on some music in between the breaks of the bands. So when I went that year, I told the organizers, I said, this is a great event, but you need DJs to keep the people dancing in between the breaks of the bands and to keep them here after the bands, and before the bands. So they were like, "Oh, we like the idea." So that same weekend, they had a press conference and announced me as the official Bacardi Salsa Congress DJ.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
so I was the one that set those standards because I told them you need to have the DJ on a riser with professional equipment, with monitors, in the spotlight because DJs are artists as well. The bands, the dancers, DJs, they're all artists. And I set those standards for the first kind. So when you walk into a Kronkers now and you see the DJs on the stage, I set those standards.
There you go.
Um, and then Bacardi started to take it around the world because they wanted to take it to different markets. So from Puerto Rico, we went to New York, we went to Miami, to LA, to Chicago, Detroit, and then we did Europe, the Europe market. We did Italy, Germany, um, Spain. I mean, we're just going all around the world.
Wow.
Mexico, Argentina, and I was the DJ traveling with that as the official Bacardi DJ. And
Wow.
they gave me a check to buy all the gear. So I was carrying all the CD. At that time, it was CDs. I was carrying CDs and I was carrying the players to play the CDs and everything because we weren't sure what equipment we would get out there. So I was
Right.
traveling with gear and the CDs and
Amazing.
all the dancers. I was the only DJ among all the dancers, and it was an incredible team. The team from Puerto Rico, from New York, from Europe, from South America, from everywhere. We had many teams. The Vasquez brothers,
Wow.
Tito Ortiz was part of the Danzaridas Papa Tambor. It was just incredible. Jason and Brenda. We were all like, it was like a little family traveling. It was
Hmm.
an incredible experience, because that really put the dancing on another level around the world, and people who were exposed to so many different styles and so many different cultures. When we went to Mexico, we went to Panama. It was wow. It was just incredible.
Henry, you gotta you gotta write a book. We're gonna work on that. I know a couple people that can write. We're gonna talk about. I mean, it's a story. It's a movie in your life. Your life is a movie. No, really, it really
Yeah,
is.
I know. I think back,
I'm
and
not
I'm
trying to.
very fortunate.
I'm not trying to suck up to you because I already got you on the interview now. I'm talking straight up. It's a
Yeah, I
movie.
understand.
It's a
I
movie and a
understand.
book in your life. I want to
Right.
double back right quick.
Okay.
We talked about Hush and we talked about the Copacabana, but we didn't talk about that Monday night thing you used to have up there. How did that get started? That used to be crazy on Monday nights.
Which one, Taj?
Tosh.
Oh well, Taj was just a continuation from the Hush and Flamingo. It's just that when the clubs closed down, we had to move it to another club.
Okay. Okay.
So the Monday night party, I ran it for like 12 years in total. From when it started in 2001 at Hush, and then we took it to Show nightclub, and then we took it to a
Right.
Flamingo, and then from Flamingo we went to Taj, and I was
Okay.
there for 7 years doing the
So I
party.
know Franklin was playing with you. What other DJs were playing with you at Taj on Monday nights?
I had Franklin. It was a funny story, Franklin, because I pushed them into the DJ and I taught him, and it was Franklin, Nelson Torres, and I had David Sala. There was like a team of DJ Woody, Andujar, Victor Andujar. We had and also Luis Salgado.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we had I had like because I had a team of DJs because it also had a mobile DJ company back then, and I used to get a lot of private gigs. I had like 4 sound systems, and
Okay.
I used to pick up a lot of weddings and corporate parties and all kinds of events. And I used to send the DJs out to work because I couldn't do all the parties myself. But Taj was just a continuation of the Mondays that started at Hush.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So you roll, you traveling all over the world. You meeting all kinds of legends. How did you end up managing Spanish Harlem Orchestra? How did that come about?
Well, Spanish Harlem was part of the Flamingo, the whole story with Flamingo, because um well, I know all the guys. I became friends with all the musicians, and I forgot how it all came about, but they told me that they had that new recording they were working on, and I heard a preview of it, and I was like, wow, this band is, I guess with all the years experience in the music, you pick up a certain ear for talent. And then me and Izzy organized an event that we had, the Dia de los Soneros, where we featured 5 singers, and 3 of them were already with Spanish Harlem, but officially the band had not been exposed yet, like released or announced. But we had Rey de la Paz, Herman Olivera, and Frankie Vasquez that was singing with the band and recorded the first album.
Wow.
And then my friend Domingo Quinones from Puerto Rico, I arranged for him to come in and who was the others, and Frankie Morales that was singing with the Tito Puente Orchestra.
Wow.
So we did a night. We did that night, and we had the band of Spanish Harlem, but it was titled as Dia de los Soneros, but basically it was a Spanish Harlem Orchestra band. That night was a bomb. It was so packed. And then what happened, it was incredible. The second set, because what people didn't know, Canario had told me not to announce it, but he was going to show up. So Canario showed up, Jimmy Sabater. It was like all these musicians and singers showed up, Azuquita, and they all jumped up on stage, and it was a big jam session. The second, it was like all the best of New York was there. Tito Allen. It was just an incredible night, man. It turned out to be like a hair raising experience. It was incredible, incredible. Just
Whoa.
everybody was there. And then I wound up managing Spanish Harlem Orchestra because since I was traveling a lot around the world, I got to meet many promoters, and I started offering the band to different events and congresses and festivals and all that. And I got them on the road to Europe, to Asia, around the U.S. And the same kind of story with Niso and Sextet too, because Niso and Sextet, I found them in a restaurant, little restaurant in New York that because they had broken up and then they got back together. And I saw them at this Spanish restaurant on the South Street Seaport, and I was like, "You swing sextet?" So then we had a welcome, like a reunion party at Flamingo, and then from there, like the response was just incredible with all the dancers, and I started managing them at that time, and
Wow.
then the producing them, and meaning Willie Torres, because Willie was working at that time with me at Taj,
Okay.
and we wound up producing them and recording them, and the CD was nominated for Grammy. It was incredible. I was the executive producer on it.
Wow. So I want you to tell the viewers about the little story when we got you guys and you brought Spanish Harlem Orchestra to the Stuff on Salsa All Star Salsa Cruise. I want you to tell them the things that you had to go through over there.
Wow, it wasn't. I remember it was funny story because Choco was there.
Uh huh.
He rest in peace. He was there, and that's when he understood the work of a manager. That's what he said. Now I understand the work you do, because we got to. I don't know what happened, but there was a mix up with all the equipment that the back line, because when we travel with the bands, they don't bring all the instruments. They're like certain things that you have to have when they arrive there, like the piano and the drums and the music stands and all that. And there was a lot of things missing when we got to Cozumel in Mexico. We didn't have the, I think, the congas. We didn't have the piano. And luckily, I had been to Cozumel before, so I had a friend that was a club owner there, and I called him. I said, I'm in trouble. I need equipment. I need you. You have piano. You have this." He said, "Yeah, yeah." He came and carrying all the stuff in. But we wound up salvaging, and I remember I had to help with the sound and everything, and to get it to sound right. But it's a lot of work. It's not just because people used to say like, "Oh, I don't want to pay the commission, this and that." But it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
The manager does organize everything and deal with the problems, deal with the travel and it's just a lot. I used to travel with Mark Anthony's band, 13 guys, and the Spanish Harlem was 13 guys. It's a lot of it's like kind of babysitting in a way. You have to be in charge of the flights and the rooms and the transportation and getting the deposits and the balance, and it's just a lot of work,
Yeah.
a lot of stress.
Well, the event turned out to be one of the biggest party that was ever had in
It
salsa.
was so great, dancing on the beach there. I remember, yeah, it was an amazing event.
You
We
know.
had a lot of fun, and the boat on the cruise. Yeah, I remember we were DJing and you were dancing and you go.
Crazy,
I
crazy.
Some dancers got sick.
Wow.
Yeah, but we had fun. It was fun. I remember hanging out with Choco and David. David Melendez was there too.
Yes, he was. David
Yeah,
Menendez. He,
yeah,
he,
may he
was,
rest
he
in
was
peace.
holding the dress rehearsals for us while we were on the beach. It was
Yeah,
crazy.
that was incredible. We stopped somewhere else. Where else did we stop? No, we went straight to Mexico, right?
Yeah, we had so many stops, but who knows?
Yeah.
So Henry,
Yes.
your biggest event, I've heard you've played to up to in front of 25,000 people. What event was that?
I've DJed different festivals, like outdoor festivals. There's one in Toronto, Luminato. But I one of the biggest events I've DJed, it was this Antillian Festen, they call it in Belgium, Antwerpen. A big, it looked like a Madison Square Garden type of venue, like big place with a big stage. I think Aventura was the band that night because every year they bring different bands, and that's when Aventura was just getting big, really big. And I opened up on stage for them, and I remember looking out. It had to be close to 15,000 people there, you
Mhm,
know. But
mhm.
yeah, I mean, I've DJed different festivals, and even like when I didn't DJ for this one, the Montreal Jazz Festival, but I remember being on stage with the Spanish Harlem Orchestra. It must have been 100,000 people looking out from the
Wow.
sea of people. Incredible for the GM stage. It was there's a yearly event in Montreal. Incredible, but being on the stage in front of so many people. But I used to do a lot of festivals, even back in the Bronx, where they had street festivals, and I used to DJ, and also Orchard Beach.
Okay.
In Orchard Beach, because they had music every Sunday, and I DJed a lot of the Sundays there in Orchard Beach, and it was thousands of people dancing there, because Orchard Beach was all about salsa. It was Bronx. That's the Bronx. Is they call it Condado de la Salsa. Is the borough of the salsa, and the salsa there is incredible, man. I've had the most amazing experience with salsa in the Bronx, and the most incredible dances I've seen in the world. The
Mhm. That-
Bronx, yeah,
wow. So Henry, you've made your name.
yes.
You've doing everything, and then all of a sudden, I look up. They tell me Henry has moved to Bangkok. I'm
Thailand,
like, what in the world? But before we touch on that, Henry, I want to
yeah,
ask you this:
yeah.
why do you think there's such a fervor? Why do you think that the dancers in Europe are so much into workshops and music more so than the people over in the States? Because I know they are. I've seen them. I've been over there. Why do you
Yeah,
think that's the
yeah.
case?
It's hard to say, but I think it's just um as I started traveling around the world, I saw many things that were different. I think because in the US, I say like the city like New York, there's just so much talent, you know? So the people take it for granted, like let's say like a band like Spanish Harlem that's in New York, or Johnny Pacheco, or Ray Barretto in New York. People in New York is okay. Ray Barretto's playing there, but people that come from outside, they go, "Wow," And I think is that you take it for granted. It's just like living in New York and you say, "Hey, I Empire State Building, yeah, Statue of Liberty." Yeah, don't even hardly ever. Some people don't even go there. That live there, and I think that's the thing. So when all these congresses started to happen and dancers traveling around the world, like I remember when I first went to Milan, having like 15 DJs standing around me and watching and learning. I think the same thing was happening with the dancers, because they were seeing
Mhm.
different styles, and they wanted to learn more, and then many instructors started to travel more too, and giving more lessons, and people picking up different styles, and that's when they started teaching on one and two, New York style, LA style, and
Mhm.
uh, and many dancers wound up moving to Europe from the U.S. because they felt limited back in the U.S. because people, I guess, take them for granted. I think that's what was happening. But my move was because I saw the scene going down. There's no more clubs like before. Like I was working 6, 7 nights a week in clubs, big clubs, and the Copacabana was 3, 4,000 people on a night.
Right.
And we don't have that anymore over there. And the clubs closed down. The musicians are not working. Um, so that was my incentive to move out because I saw potential. This is like kind of a virgin market, there's a nightlife, but they're hungry for new talent. And as a DJ, dancers, I think people are hungry to learn and hear and see something different.
Okay. I'm
Yeah,
going to come over there and hang out with you, Henry. I'm coming over to Bangkok real soon. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
I keep no, I really am. I keep saying that.
Okay.
I,
Well,
I,
now with the situation is gonna be a while. I think is kind of
yeah,
sad what's going
yeah,
on now,
yeah, with
and
the
hope
COVID.
everything gets back to normal maybe next year.
So even though you're over in Bangkok now, you still before COVID-19, you were still playing at several congresses. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've limited myself to the congresses and festivals because now it's just became overwhelming. It's just too many, and sometimes 3 festivals or 3 congresses in one weekend. But I've limited myself to a few. I do the Montreal and the Toronto. We have one in Bangkok, and I do an event in Japan. Those like 4 festivals that I DJ for.
Okay.
But I've been concentrating more because I'm DJing 5 nights. I was DJing 5 nights a week here, and a lot of private events as well. Yachts and beach parties and all kinds of stuff.
So you guys, what's the situation over there? Are you guys practicing social distance? Is the city locked down, or what's the story right now over
Things are opening up here because we didn't get. I think they kept it pretty much under control. They shut down everything, and we haven't had any new cases. Thailand in whole, I think they had about 3,400 cases, and about 3,200 of them recovered. They had like 60 deaths, and but most of the people recovered, and they haven't had any new cases. The only new cases have been from people coming back in,
there?
but they've
Right.
had to quarantine for
Mhm.
and keep them away from until they cleared. And they still haven't opened up the country, like really opened up to allow tourists back, and so it's been pretty much under control. And now things are opening up slowly. I'm back to working 3 nights a week.
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
And there's people going out. Of course, a little bit slower than before, but
Right.
slowly but surely things are picking up. There's a lot of businesses suffering, uh,
Yeah.
but we didn't get hit that bad here, considering the population here. When like compared to places like the U.S. and India and Brazil and some places that got hit really hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh, I still promote it. I haven't had a party in 6 months. I mean, I'm like, DC
yeah,
is locked down. Now they have some activity in Baltimore and outskirts of here, and some in Virginia. They're practicing social distancing, but nothing's going down in DC. I don't see me having a party till like August or July of next year, actually. But
yeah, exactly. That's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm saying. I think things won't really open up again until next year.
yeah,
Like
that's
everywhere, I
cool.
think it's just it's a sad situation.
Yeah,
And the entertainment business have been hit really hard.
really hard, really.
I'm not right now. I got like one call for countdown, like New Year's Eve and Christmas. Normally around this time, I have like 20 DJs working already booked for because I have an entertainment company here, so I have several DJs that work under my company,
Okay,
and I book bands and DJs and dancers for different
beautiful,
events.
beautiful. Well, Mr. Knowles,
Yes.
Henry, it has been such a pleasure, and
Oh,
again,
it's
an
my
honor.
pleasure.
I hope some of the young generation tuned in. And just like I was telling them, they're crying about why you having the thing at 1 o'clock. I got to work. You know, I got the
Well, it's
interview.
recorded, right? They
I'm
can
going
see.
to regenerate it. It's recorded right now. I'm going
Yeah.
to regenerate it all over, and so hopefully the younger generation can see the things that you've done, and then they realize, Earl's always calling someone a living legend. You really are a living legend.
Thank you. Thank you. I
And
appreciate it.
normally I would ask you, like, well, Henry, what would you suggest that DJs do to become as successful as you are? I'm not going to do that because that's not realistic. Nope, there's only one Henry Knowles. No one will ever be
Well,
able to be like you. No, no,
I mean,
it won't.
I have, I have done DJ workshops and I've consulted DJs. As a matter of fact, now in the Bangkok Salsa Fiesta last year here, we had a DJ workshop that was part of the festival, which really went well. But I would say for DJs is do your homework, do your homework, and one of the things I always tell DJs too, I say learn how to dance
Yes,
because
but
your
Henry,
heart be on the floor with the dances.
the, I love you, but those workshops that you're having right now,
Yeah.
those are scams. No one's gonna, no one's gonna be good looking like you. No one's gonna be able to dress like you. No one's gonna meet all the people you have met. No one's gonna know how to talk to people, have the savoir faire that you have. It just can't be happening. So I'm not going to ask somebody to tell them what they could do to be as successful as you. It's just not going to happen. No one's traveled all over the world. No
I,
one
I've,
will set the
I've been
standard.
fortunate to live that era, because that era cannot be repeated. I was lucky to be part of it in the 80s and 90s because there's never going to be anything like that again, you
Never.
know. And I was very fortunate to be in the middle of it. And now when I think back, I say, damn, like I wish, because you take it for granted also, every night you're around those bands and you're around those people and you take it for granted, and now it's all gone, it's like, and it's just memory. I mean, it's beautiful memories, but yeah, I was able to live part of that era, and I'm very fortunate for that, and grow. But what I would say, one of the things that made me successful in this is that in the beginning when I started, I had to learn it all. I had to learn about equipment. I had to learn about doing the sound, because in the clubs in the Bronx, there was no light guy, there was no sound guy, there was no MC. So I had to do everything. I had to set up the band. I had to do the sound for the band. I had to introduce them. I had to control the lights, and I had to troubleshoot if there was a problem with the sound. So it's important for DJs to learn it all. Learn the skill, take it serious, and do your homework with the music. Learn about all the genres.
Henry, thank you so much. It's been a blast. I've got automatic street credit for interview shows by having you on. Thank you so much for helping me out,
No, it's
Henry.
my
I'm gonna hook
pleasure.
up with you in Bangkok when this
Yeah, you
COVID
gotta
thing is
come out
over.
here. You gotta come out here. I mean, Frankie's been out here.
Oh,
Frankie, Tito,
really?
yeah, Stacy Lopez. There's been a few dancers that come out here. Mambo, Mario,
Okay.
Mambo, yeah,
Okay.
Mario been out
Yeah,
here.
that's
Mar-
great.
Mario B, yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll have a stuck on salsa party with Henry Knowles in Bangkok.
Yeah,
Yeah,
why
it
not?
can
Yeah,
happen.
we could do it. We could do it here. You're gonna get stuck in Bangkok. You might not make it back.
Henry, thank you so much. It's been a blast. Thank you so
Yeah,
much, Mr.
it's my
Knowles. You're
pleasure.
awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Okay.